everybody. Welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I'm going to be the host for this show. Now, this is my very first live stream, so I have a little bit of the heebie-jeebies going, and not the least of which is around technology, which is a little ironic since I'm a technologist by profession. But I'm going to try to make this a fun show, something I hope I can enjoy. Every week, I'm running a Rime of the Frostmaiden in 5th edition game. It's a module that just came out from Wizards of the Coast, and I need to do session prep for it. I wanted to get into live streaming for a little while, so I'm going to go ahead and live stream my session prep here. And I think we can talk a little bit about D&D, about session design. I've been gaming since forever, really. I'm an old man, so I've been gaming for quite a long time. And I just love gaming and I love D&D. So I would love for you to chat with me during these sessions. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. I'll answer them as best I can. I think I can see the chat. I have to confess I'm doing multi-streaming and I've got a stream aggregator, so I'm hoping that works. But we'll see how the technology works for me today. So, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Let's talk a little bit about that module in a second, but I want to give an introduction to what kind of session prep that I typically do, so you have an idea of what the lay of the land is and what I'm trying to do. I'm a big advocate of inputs and outputs and how pieces of a campaign fit together. I really love Rime of the Frostmaiden. I think it's a great module. I think there's been a little bit of hoopla online about it that is undeserved. I will say if you're going to run this module, be prepared for some work on your own. To me, that doesn't matter because I always modify a module. I make it my own. You'll see when we do some of the session prep today that I sometimes modify it quite a bit. So it's something I like to do. I hope you like to do it too. And if you do, hopefully you'll find this stream useful. And if not, I'll do my session prep during it, and it's something I have to do anyway. So thank you very much for joining me again. If you are picking this stream up a little bit later on either Twitch or YouTube, I am streaming to both of them. Go ahead and leave a like, please, or subscribe to the channel if it's appropriate on YouTube. I'm a brand new channel. I have run some YouTubes before that were recorded, but I've never done a live stream. So again, I'm a little nervous, and I would love for you to do this with me every week. I'd love to answer your questions and get into a conversation again and again. So hit that like, hit subscribe, click that bell icon, do all the thingy things that you need to do to make social media work for us, and I would very much appreciate it. So thank you very much for the support. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active there. Under all the platforms, I'm Optional Rule, so it should be pretty easy to find. So thank you very much. So let's get into the preparation method that I use. You're looking at my prep document online right there. So if you're familiar with this already, it's probably going to seem pretty common to you, but I use what's called Sly Flourish's Lazy DM prep method. I highly recommend it. Lazy DM, what's it called? Look up Sly Flourish. He sells a bunch of great books for telling you how to do sort of economic methods for DM prep. I'm a big advocate of that. I'm older, so I have a job like everybody else, and I can't do 8 hours per session. So this really makes the preparation for your session very economic, targeted on what's going to happen in the session itself, and gives you a lot of leeway as a GM to run almost a sandbox game rather than read things out of the module, which I never really like to do anyway. So the format of this is pretty simple. So every session has its own notes. You're seeing my session 1 notes, which happened last week. I'll get into that in a minute. But so what you end up with is you list the players out, what their goals are, what their backstories are, the critical elements. You don't need to post a whole lot here, although you see I can be a little wordy in how I do my session prep. I give a little where we were session. I list myself. This is my own thing. I list the themes that I'm trying to stick to, or the themes that sort of come in again. I really try when I get into scenes and secrets to link everything back to the central themes that I'm trying to do. And you'll see a big part of my personal session prep is I love setup, I love setting the stage, I love setting the stakes, and I love connecting stories. I can be a little bit bad about having multiple story threads, so I'm trying to be very disciplined in this module to stick to the story threads that are really presented to me, because that keeps me between the rails. So the themes I list, the potential scenes that might happen, that's fluid based on player choices, obviously. I can't dictate what scenes that are going to happen, but players tend to follow what I put out there. I list what secrets are going on in the world, so what they could discover. An important part of this is I don't list how they'll find it out. Usually I don't list how it'll find it out. I just let that evolve organically. Usually through the scenes, there's some expression of the secrets that happen here, but I list those out. You'll see when I get to the next session, once a secret has been revealed, I move it to a different section of the document, but this was session 1, so we really didn't have too much there. I list out important NPCs, where they might be. I tend to overlist here. And then fantastic locations, which is a great thing to do. I think that some of the locations, especially Rime of the Frostmaiden, one of the big things you as a DM, I think, need to work on is how are you going to make that setting exciting? Because it can get a little monotonous, because for 2 reasons. One, it is perpetually locked in darkness, with other than a little bit of a twilight that happens every day. The core theme of the module is that Icewind Dale is locked in darkness, and terrible, terrible cold. So the weather kind of is consistent. The darkness is consistent. And if you're not careful, a lot of things can happen out on tundra. And just rather than saying tundra over and over and over again, I really try to go a long way to doing something unique about the locations that they're going to. And I'll actually get to that location in a second. So to recap sort of where we were, I did a session 0, and I always do a small, my sessions run about 3 hours. In session 0, I did about 2 hours of an intro and talk about expectations and setting the sort of safety guidelines and all that stuff that you would expect from a normal session. It was a great session. I have 4 good players in this session, and I'll get to what their characters are in a second. And that, at the end of it, I like to do about an hour to give them some initial, something to set the stage for the world and react to what's going on. Now, I did that with this group, partially to set the stage, but also to work on our virtual tabletop. We're in the midst of COVID. If you're viewing this years from now, or if this is in some weird AI archive, we're in the midst of a COVID epidemic right now. So face-to-face games are hard to find. And, you shouldn't be finding them right now, but they're not really realistic. And I prefer face-to-face. So we all need to get used to that virtual tabletop. So I put up Foundry VTT. I have to say, by the way, there's no paid sponsors here. It's my first show. I'm my own sponsor, so thank you to me. But Foundry VTT I think is great. I'd used Roll20 before this. I think that's great as well. I used Fantasy Grounds as well. I think that's also fantastic. But I wanted to give Foundry stretch its legs, try it out, see how it worked for me and my group. And I have to say, after a few sessions, I really love it. Now, I took the step of setting it up under my own server. You might end up seeing it in this live stream. I have it, I use it for planning right here because I can measure distances and so forth. So the ability to put it under my own server, my own domain and things like that really was attractive to me. And the performance is great. The features are good. Anyway, I liked it. There are other people I know. Sly Furge uses Owlbear, and I think that's great. It's very lightweight compared to this. Does a lot of rules things, but I don't know. I enjoy it. So anyway, that was our virtual tabletop, and our session there was I wanted to set the stage that Icewind Dale was cut off from the rest of the world. So what I did was the passage in and out of Icewind Dale, I added some flavor elements here, which said that once every full moon, which is the waning power of Auril, who's the goddess who's locking this area in perpetual darkness, that her power wanes then during the full moon, and every full moon they bring a caravan out from the main town of Bryn Shander to the 10 Towns Pass to Hundlestone, and they do some trading. A lot of people will leave the region actually, and then they'll bring in what few people might be coming in additional supply. So it's really this sort of desperate supply line, and I wanted to set that stage with that narrative element, which it did pretty well. 2 of the players were coming from outside Icewind Dale, which is on Twitter. A lot of game masters have reflected that how do you get players there? That's how I chose to do it. And again, I set the stage by doing that. They came in with 2 players that live in the region. So they came in with Bulette sort of plowing through this deep 10-foot, 15-foot, 20-foot snowdrift in these passes. And I really laid on thick the narrative element of how thick the snow was, how cold it was, how it got darker and they can see the sun move down in the horizon as they got further into Icewind Dale, just to set the weirdness, the stakes of the weather and so forth. I also wanted to set up one of the villains of the stories, the 3 main villains. By the way, before I get into this, tons of spoilers for Ice Rim, for Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden here. So if you want to go into this module cold, this is not the stream for you. This is really for DM who wants to run it, or players who are just interested in getting the DM who may not run it. If you're a player in my campaign, go. Get out of here. Not welcome. Honor system, so please don't take a look at this because I'm going to talk about our game and what I've got coming up. All right, so back to the snowed in pass that I talked about. So this caravan is extended over time. People are getting lost. There's two things that I wanted to do to really set the stage. I'll talk about the villains in a second. I mentioned that I wanted to set how cut off and isolated Icewind Dale was. I did that effectively. I also wanted to set up sort of their relationship with adventurers in this region. Icewind Dale is full of hard-bitten people. They're used to adventurers, but I see adventurers as being kind of narcissistic and maybe a little bit of an a-hole. So what I did is I had an adventuring group sort of really full of themselves, hanging around, not talking to any of the caravanners, sort of thinking of themselves as above everybody else, having great equipment, that whole bit. At the rallying point, they get into the snowdrift itself. They're plying through the caravan, and it's only, I think, 20 something miles, but it takes 4 days for them to get through this, which set the stage for travel. During the first night, everyone sort of had to roll the survival roll. It's bitterly cold. It's very difficult to camp in this weather. And I had the adventurers cast a tiny hut. So this dome sort of comes up over everybody. They stretch and they sort of look around at everybody and, oh, well, and they get in their dome and they have the entire caravan just look at them very resentfully. So that set up like an idea of how you want to interact with the people in Icewind Dale, which is you probably want to not show off too much, don't be too garish, and I thought that did really effective for the players. They picked up on that right away. Then we get into the next day, and I wanted to set up one of the villains of the setting. So in the module, I'm sticking to mostly the villains in the module, which there's three main villains. There's the Arcane Brotherhood, which is out here looking for Netherese artifacts, which will come in later in the module. There is Oriel herself, who is the goddess of sort of winter, who is kind of cursing the area, wants Icewind Dale to suffer. So she's the one locking the region into perpetual ice. And that was set up with the caravan, obviously. The Arcane Brotherhood I just set up in one of the player backgrounds. The whole reason they are coming here is because they are with a rival college from Silvery Moon in the Forgotten Realms, and they want this player to kind of take a peek on what's going on with the Arcane Brotherhood up here. They're always up to no good, so they sent them up here to sort of find themselves. And then the third villain that will rise, it comes in the middle, is the Duergar. These sort of underdark evil dwarves that are looking to establish a kingdom above ground, and they don't get introduced until the later module. So I wanted to use this as an opportunity to introduce the Duergar now and let them know that this was a rising threat. So what happened is I just had a simple ambush. They're going down this pass. The Duergar sort of set off these small explosions all along the pass, which causes an avalanche, and this avalanche buries the caravan, and the Duergar attack. Now, I didn't run the entire caravan because it's 100 people or so. I think I said 60, but a lot of people, more than you want to run into combat. So all I did was focus on the small section of trail where the players were, and there were 2 or so Duergar up from sniper positions. I gave them flintlock pistols that they used, a special crystal that you can find in the area, sort of the gunpowder for, and it worked out really well. So the players had a simple encounter. They ran through the virtual tabletop, got some time to get used to it. They took down these dwarves, and I set the stage that now there's this unusual, suddenly the Duergar are starting to make ambushes, and they seem to be invested in interrupting the caravans for some reason. So that's a setup for later on down in the campaign. I also took out the adventurers, which I enjoyed too much. The adventurers I set up as sort of an example foil that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. They ended up buried in the avalanche and all died. So that took them out. So it really set the players up as, well, not a lot of adventurers live out here. So the fact that they'll live over time, that sets them apart from a lot of adventurers. And I'll repeat that theme again and again throughout sort of the Icewind Dale encounters. But that's how I set it up in the first session. So second session, Well, actually, I should say it's the first real session. That was session 0. First real session actually kicked off. I did. That's a session prep notes right that you're looking at right here. Let me go over the players in it. There is Nim. He is a gnome wizard. He's what's called a cursed vessel of Orcus. I'll get to that in a second. There's Rias, who's a human paladin from Silvery Moon. There's Stor, a human barbarian from the Wolf tribe, and then there's Liger, a half-elf ranger from Lonely Tree. Very handy out here. I usually set up where we were, so I set up here where that caravan was, my themes. So potential scenes, I got them in the town square. One of the other things I want to set up, I've changed significantly setting wise, is that each of the 10 towns is making a sacrifice to Oriel every new moon. I think they said it. I don't know if I made that part up or not, but I said every new moon. I think they said it in the module. And and different towns do different things. It starts with the sacrifice of warmth for a lot of the small towns, which means they don't light a fire on the night of the new moon or the period of the new moon, and they sacrifice their warmth. There are other towns, mid-sized towns, sacrifice food, so they'll put out important food out on a hill as an offering to Oriel. And then the big towns, the big 3, they sacrifice a person, which is pretty odd. So I wanted to give a little bit more meaning and depth to that. First of all, why? In the module, they don't really cover, they just say they're kind of doing it. There's an implied they're hoping to convince Oriel to stop, but that seemed not enough traction. I want to give more stakes to this. So I set up instead that prior to this, which started about 6 months ago in the campaign, they had Oriel had visited the towns with a blizzard, a horrible blizzard every new moon. It killed a few people every time, and the sages sort of realized if they did a sacrifice to Oriel at the new moon, she wouldn't unleash that blizzard. So that's why they're doing it. And if one town doesn't do it, everybody gets it. So it's a sort of prisoner's dilemma thing. So this first potential scene is town square. I talk about the ancestor polls. They come in, and I set each of the 3 towns doing it to have a different reason why they're doing it. I didn't want to have sort of I think they set it up in the module that there's a lottery, which is creepy enough, but I wanted to say something about the different personalities of the 3 towns that do it. So Bryn Shander, which is the main town that I had the PCs come to at first, I set up that they're basically doing it through sort of a Hunger Games thing. They have a lottery, but right now they've got people volunteering to go out. Typically, I'm tapping into those sort of myths of the North here in North America, where the old people sometimes go out on an ice floe and just let themselves pass out there. And that's what I've had. So they've had a lot of families with older people going out, sacrificing themselves. Super sad, obviously. And that's the stage I want to set. Down in East Haven, which is another town, I have them arresting people. So they've been executing a criminal in that way every time. And that's maybe some trumped up charges. So we'll get to that later. And then in, I think it's Targos, they have a lottery ostensibly, but it's rife with corruption. And it's certainly not going well because there's some backstory there about the Zentarum. So that's how I set it up. So potential scene, players come to the center of Bryn Shander. They see these totem poles being carved, and they have an effigy of the person. And it's basically the town's way. They honor anyone who's volunteered for each month. So they've got 6 poles up, and they're making the 7th, which was the one that just went a few weeks prior to this in the campaign. And they're making sort of the life story and an effigy. I set up the North Look Inn. That's a plot that's ongoing. So actually, why don't I go in and this is the format. Instead of me talking about last session, let's get to work on new session because we're about 20 minutes in. So let's see how this thing is going to go. All right. So what I have, the components of, let's go over the players again because I have a couple secrets. They took secrets and clues that players did. I have a gnome wizard here. He wants to thwart the Arcane Brotherhood. I have what he's called the Cursed Vessel of Orcus. That's a secret I made up because they rolled a 20 when I did it, which was a sort of GM's choice. And basically, they have never killed anyone yet, so they don't know this. Out of character, they know it though. There's a very high likelihood anytime they kill anybody with their magic that creature will come back as an undead within 0 to 5 days. I need to create some more information about that, but I'm not going to get to it till later, so I can leave that sort of loose right now. I think it's sort of some curse of Orcus or some infestation of the Raven Queen. I'll decide where that's going to go later. But right now, that's the MacGuffin for that character. I have a human paladin, Rias, who's trying to reestablish her family for glory, blah, blah, blah. She's, oh, by the way, Nim likes obscure lore, artifacts, puzzles, and role playing quips. I always put, like, what does a player seem to like in here? I love my DMing technique. I love to ask players what they like, but I find that everyone always says, "Oh, I like this," or they'll give you feedback that doesn't always map to their behavior. So I do ask them, but more important than anything, I watch their reaction and what they gravitate towards in game. Um, Hello, Valexilon. It's great to have you here. Thank you very much. Go ahead and ask any questions you have. I'm in the middle of session prep right now. I'm covering the characters. I use a lazy DM session prep, so thank you very much for saying hello. So Nim, so what I highly recommend you write down what the players seem to react to in your game, in your session prep notes, and keep that in mind so you can create more scenarios for it. So that's what I do. He loves obscure lore, artifacts, and things like that. Rias, who's that human paladin trying to reestablish her glory, she loves combat opportunities. Her opportunity to command and be sort of a badass comes in, and she does that frequently. And she likes to personally avoid the rules as a player. She doesn't like rules heavy games, so I try to keep that in mind. I have Store, a human barbarian of the Wolf tribe up in Icewind Dale, and he's quiet. He really likes stoic opportunities to nod and grunt at people. He seems, I put touch. This should be tough. He likes to seem tough and rugged. So opportunities to use constitution rolls, strength rolls, those kinds of things he seems to gravitate towards. Then there's Liger, a human half-elf from Lonely Tree. He's boastful. He's sort of overblowing his accomplishments, but he's probably going to get to the point. He's also secretly a Harper agent. So I've got some story I'm including for that. He loves art, role-playing dialogue. He loves to get into plot details, and opportunity to show why a ranger keeps people alive out here. So build in stuff like that. By the way, Store's secret, he took a secret too. He discovered an ancestor, a spirit. I think it was one from the book where he discovered a spirit in the cave. He's been a hermit living in Kevin's Cairn for a long time. So he has decided that he's going to interact with the spirit, and he wants to avoid his rage. His role-playing mechanism is he wants to avoid, and he's afraid of the rage under his barbarian thing, which is interesting. This spirit is constantly asking him to rage and trying to get him to rage all the time. It's an ancestor spirit of the Wolf tribe. I have some plot and secrets around that. We'll get that into that in a second. So what I want to do from here, they've done the foaming mug quest, which was just going after these dwarves come in wounded from the road. They were attacked by a yeti, and they've lost their shipment of gold. That's a modification, by the way. I think they were attacked by goblins or something like that, and I've modified that. I wanted the Yeti to attack them, and I want to use this as an opportunity to introduce the Zentarum, which is not part of the original module. So I had, in last session, a secret in here where the dwarves, two of the dwarves had gone ahead, and one of the dwarves had been in cahoots with the goblins to try to steal this shipment. So any questions? Vlexon, I just got informed my idea that gets me 6 crits on a surprise encounter may be a bit much. Your option on a level 12 overall 4/5/3 assassin battle master Gloomstalker. My opinion of that. I mean, I don't have a negative opinion of that. I think that I think that can work as long as it's within the rules and it's consistent. I don't really have a problem with that. Normally, when people have a problem with that, it's maybe they feel like it's power gaming or it's overshadowing other characters. So let me separate those replies there, because there's different. I have a different attitude on both of them. First, overshadowing other players, that I think is a legit concern by every GM and every and should be of every player as well. Remember, this is a group activity, so a lot of times that sort of rugged loner, you want to find opportunities to share skills, do something helpful with other players in your party. You are responsible, not the GM. Everybody at the table is responsible for managing their relationships with other players. So first of all, that's one issue. I don't know if that's what you're asking or not, but if that's an issue, I would just say consider that. The other issue, though, is power gaming, which I don't have a problem with. It depends on the style of the game. Some games are more narrative. I really don't have a problem with that at all. I don't understand how you get 6 crits on a surprise encounter unless you do 6 attacks and they're all crits. I guess because you're an assassin. I'd have to read the ability, but if it's in the rules, I think it should be fine. You might want to. It might be out of the style for the game. It might be that the other players are not as worried about that kind of power level, and the game master's not as worried, and they're trying to sort of keep things in the rails to get everybody. But I don't really have a problem with that. I would say talk to your GM about where they want to go, and just keep in mind that it's a group activity. So that's my opinion on that. So again, so we're the setup for what I want to do in this session is I need. They've just come back from this lost iron shipment. I set up the story so that the Goblin Boss actually knows one of the dwarves that was on this shipping this iron, and had arranged to scare off the dwarves with their polar bears that are along with them. But and that's what the dwarf thought. But what happened instead was the goblin decided he didn't want to risk his polar bears, so instead he bought a fetish, a little icon that he put out there to attract yetis, and he put it along the path that he arranged for them to go. And a yeti came in. The Goblin Boss thought the goblins would run, but it turns out one of them died because they got surprised in a blizzard. So that was sort of the setup. It was a botched heist that was supposed to be innocent, and the players went out there and they were hired when the dwarves came in to go out and recover this shipment. They ran across the clue of this fetish, so they knew something was up, that the Yeti came out for some reason. And I actually had a great session where the players ended up in a kind of a slap fight with the goblins, which was great. They come there, the goblins are pushing the sled away to a wagon, and I wanted to really, and this is intentional as a GM, and I recommend this for you. When you're starting a new campaign, these are mostly new players for me. I want to get a level of the room. I want to figure out, what do the players do? Are they murder hobos? Do they like to talk things out? So I like to throw an ambiguous encounter for them at first to see what they do. And so I modified it to the Yetis hanging around. I teased that, foreshadowed that by the encounter to begin with, and the fetish. And so the real stakes are they could get into a fight with the goblins if they want, but they were totally amiable to getting some more information about the heist and negotiating. And the real threat was going to be the Yeti if they made any noise. And that's exactly what happened. They went in, they tried to negotiate. The goblins were like, nah, these are ours. We found them and we're taking them. And there was this comedy of errors where the players tried to drag and pull the sled away, and the goblins are trying to tug it the other way. And it was this huge comedy of errors that worked out better than I could have hoped, because they did this like advantage strength roll of the party versus the goblins, and the party still lost. So I had the goblins come and start using a lever to move it along, and they're chuckling and laughing at the party, and they do all this argument. The Yeti shows up, they get in a big fight, the goblins run, of course. The players just totally plow through this Yeti, which is a CR3 creature against first level characters, and that's worth mentioning. And in that, a lot of critique has come to Rime and the Frostmaiden people have called it unbalanced because there's a lot of first level parties against CR3 creatures. That is not my experience. I've seen this in a few other modules where the party, I come in thinking, oh my God, this is maybe too powerful for them, and I think maybe I'm going to crank down the hit points or something like that. Not a problem. The party, like a buzzsaw, worked through this Yeti. One or two of them got wounded, but nobody went down. Another question. Got the other players covered. Maneuvering, superiority dice, and the battle master. Okay. My companions had the goblin on the sled. So you're playing Rime of the Frostmaiden too. My companions targeted the goblins on the sled, calming the polar bears, and no Yeti. Yeah. So someone's talking about their experience in it. I threw the Yeti in because I wanted to create, what I wanted to do is have a heist backstory going here to set the stage for the Zentarum. That's one thing I don't think they do well in the module. The Zentarum is a factor in a couple of the towns, and it's a risk prospect. One of the players has a secret if they're working with the Harpers. And I've set a secret in the campaign that, matter of fact, you can probably see it. So there's a sequence and information that can come out. Player doesn't know it yet, but the Zentarum are actively hunting the Harpers because they don't want them to undo it. So I'm trying to set the stakes in these encounters for that. That's why I did this way. And in fact, I'm going to I need a secret here. So let me get to some of the scenes, actually. I'm doing a lot of background. This is the 29th session. So these are all... by the way, one of the things I did, fantastic locations. Definitely recommend this for you GMs out there. I think in the module, you just kind of go out in the snow and you find this this shipment of iron. Instead, I just want to give some personality, something special to that location. So I made this thing up called the Dancer's Garden, which is basically said that 50 years ago, Elder Basilisk had nested in that area, and it had turned a bunch of people to stone that had run down there. And so all these stone, these people, once people, and now stone figures trapped in the snow, and they look like they're dancing. So it's a local legend. So that's one of the things I set up just for a little flavor. So one of the things I want to do is I want to continue this secret of the Zentarum, going ahead and setting the stake for them. So I want back alley. I want a back alley in Bryn Shander. And what I want out of this scene is I want the party did not uncover this fact that one of the dwarves was in on the heist. And then one of the dwarves is described as having frostbite on their nose, losing a couple fingers. I made it that one, so that if the parties find out, they might throw in role-playing wise, they think they've suffered enough. But we'll see where that goes. So back alley, I have a question here. What are your take on the new Adventurers League restrictions, assuming you play Adventurers League, that is? I don't know, actually. I don't play Adventurers League. I'm bad about that. I have heard there's an Ian podcast, Ian World podcast, Morris's unofficial D&D podcast or something like that. It's on ianworld.org. I'd suggest you check it out. They had great commentary because they're big Adventurers League folk. And I know that this season is drastically different, and there's a lot of concern that this season invalidates characters from previous seasons or accomplishments from previous seasons. That is an interesting design choice. I know that there's some talk about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and how we'll redo racial stats, but I don't quite understand the details of how that makes a difference. So I don't have an opinion other than I would expect people are going to be argue about this quite a bit. So anyway, the back alley Bryn Shander. So what I want to do is I want to firmly state for the PCs and the stake that the Zentarum are trying to mess with things. So I'm going to have the Goblin Boss and the dwarf, which is Korax, I think. Korax, something like that. I'll look it up. They are meeting with Zentarum agent, who is going to harass them about the botched job. So that'll set the story. It will sort of let that story of the Zentarum come out. I need a new NPC though. There actually isn't a NPC in this world. So if you have a name suggestion, let me know. I tend to use this NPC generator right here. So this does a couple things for me. It gives me race diversity. It gives me gender diversity, which is good because I don't want to make everybody human and male. And it gives me some ideas. So I'll take this. He's a junk dealer. Ooh, I like that. Voice is a half singing voice. I love that role playing thing. So Arnold Betts, half human, and I will go ahead and I will grab the permalink for this, and I will drop that in my session prep notes. Now this is a great tool for me. I love it. I just write NPC, and that is where the link for that NPC is going to go. And what I will do is put their name down in important NPCs. So this is a NPC in Bryn Shander. What was his name again? His name is Arnold Beats, human male. Arnold Beats. And down. Zentarum agent in Bryn Shander. I already said it's in Bryn Shander. So yeah, that's a great, God, I love that. Thank God for this tool. I love it so much. Azobai is the Goblin Boss, by the way. That's the one that'll come in here. So I'll have something, and let me just set down a secret here of, what's the name? Arnold again? Arnold B8 Bytes doesn't want any witnesses. So he's going to have the dwarf killed in an alley. So I'll stage some. So what I'll do is I'll have the player who's the Harper agent will get their contact will tell them, hey, I think there's something weird going on about the shipment, and I seen some guy I've been watching for a while. I want you to go spy on them in an alley. So I'll give a short sort of I'll give a short sort of a short encounter. I don't want to make it too much because they may not bring the other players with them. Another question. Would you mind throwing in a paladin that thinks they can cook as an NPC, but due to poison and disease immunity, they think medium rare chicken with mild mushrooms and a nightshade berry sauce makes an excellent meal? Are you messing with me? All right. Yeah. Would I throw them in? I think that's hilarious, to be honest. I think that is amazing. And actually, it's a house rule that I have. Especially in Icewind Dale, I put exhaustion plays a much bigger role than it does in a lot of other games, even more so than the module states it out. And I'm not getting into what my house rule is for it here. I might do it in a future session, but basically you build up lots more levels of exhaustion. And actually, I let a player use cooking utensils if they're proficient to help heal an extra level of exhaustion in the game. So that would be an interesting mix with that house rule. Like, what if the PC that was really bad at it kept doing it? Or anyway, that would be an interesting. Probably get tired at the table. The other players would, but it would be interesting interaction. So go for it, man. Come back next week. Tell me if you do that in a game, how that would go. So Arnold Beats needs to. Doesn't want to witness kill a dwarf in an alley. That is good. What else do I need? So I want to set, that will cap off the last adventure and actually inject a mistake I made. They did talk with the Goblin Boss. I just should have had that information come out talking with the Goblin Boss. Like, he doesn't want to give it up because he's being paid. He can't, maybe he was afraid of getting his boss angry. That would have brought a new dimension into the role play of it. And actually, honestly, I had too many things I was keeping track of, and I just didn't think of it. So I wish I had done that, but I didn't. So I'm going to bring it in this session. I'm going to have a small scene in an alley, opportunity for stealth, a few other things like that. It's probably going to go south for combat, so I'll throw in like an assassin, maybe a couple bandits, actually, not assassins, but that's what that will be. All right, then I want to get the players out to the next adventure. One of the ways that the first 4 or 5 levels of the module is set up is sort of sandboxy. You can go to any town, do any adventure. I didn't like that because I don't want to have to prepare 10 different adventures. Bluntly, I'm lazy. So I want a more planned out way for them to progress through the module. So I have decided I actually want them to go to Tourmaline. I never know. I read these names. I can't pronounce it. So Tourmaline, which is a town that's about 9 miles away. And actually, let me bring up this. So one of the difficulties I have with the module is they set out a whole new set of programming goals. Hold on, my cat's trying to get up here, and I don't want her to be annoying. Hi, sweetie. Hi. She has the habit of sitting on my computer, and she sometimes turns it off. So we don't want that to happen. So the where was I going with this? So Tourmaline. I've set up this. Here goes the cat across the desk. Come on, sweetie. This is not the time. Say hi. Say hi to everybody on stream. All right. So I set up this. There's these 2 starter adventures. They're a little unclear how they're supposed to play out, but they're Cold Hearted Killer is the module I went with. She almost turned my computer off there. That's a killer story. It's set up really basic and straightforward in the game. You find somebody who's been killing people who've gotten out of this human sacrifice element of Oriel, and you go and you're hired by some dwarf to go find them and kill them. I bumped that story up a lot more. I want that to be an arc that is happening over the entire sort of level 1 to level 5 experience, maybe cap off this chapter. It's actually chapter 2, chapter 1, the Icewind Dale Tale of 10 Towns. I want to cap this off with that, so I want to beef that up. So what I did is I set up, you can see this Carl Gold, important NPC, Carl Go the Tracker, who's a He's an orc bounty hunter. He's the most famous bounty hunter in the region, but he's extremely old and he's dying. So he's picked up a tiefling female who was. I've had this killer. I've modified it. It's not just killing the people who got out of the sacrifice, but they are. He's killing like the servants in the house, and it's just he's very sloppy and very brutal. So this person is a daughter of one of the servants of the earliest victims, and he sort of did a Mandalorian type of thing, or lone wolf and cub, where he sort of picked this girl up and he's been dragging her around with him the whole time. She's very young, and she's been caring for him. So the players encounter him in the Northlook Inn. He's too old. He just can't get out anymore. His secret that I set up is he actually just wants to die. He knows he's dying. He can't. He knows he's not going to get this killer. So he's going to hire the PCs to do it as his last ditch effort. And he intends to volunteer himself to be the next sacrifice at the next moon. So I love this idea of the players making it. They had a good initial encounter with him. They'll go out, do some adventures that he leads them on. They'll come back to Bryn Shander at some time just to find him gone and one of those totem poles being carved with his effigy on it. I love that. Hopefully it will hit emotionally with the players, but I don't know. So anyway, I've gone this route. And that's what I'm doing with this storyline. So the players have come in. They've already talked to him. They've laid the stakes of, listen, I found a killer. They seem to be part of a cult of Oriel who's killing people who worm their way out of the adventure. I've beefed up this a little bit more story-wise, and I've been thinking about that, and I don't have a secret yet. So Torga Icevane's caravan is making the rounds between. That's all I had in my last session secret. So I want them to be Torga Icevane. I can never spell anything, so don't worry about that. I'll clean it up later. Is a cult of, she's Tiger Tribe. So one of the other elements is the Tiger Tribe is sort of down with Oriel and wants to use this opportunity to sort of have the Tribe rise up and be one of the only ones left if they honor her enough. So cultist, she's a cultist of Oriel. She's outcast. Maybe she was a cannibal. Cannibal at one time. In favor again now. And I have wanted them to be doing these murders for a reason. I would love for that to sort of culminate at the end of this 1 to 5 arc in something and have the players go from town to town collecting clues about that. But that's hard to do, so I'm trying to plan this out now. So what I want them to do is, I love this idea of, I've already set the stakes with a plot that I added, that the towns are doing this sacrifice to avoid this crazy blizzard that used to come every month. So I want them to try to bring it back. That's what I want them to do. This is culminating with, they want to convince Oriel to bring back the blizzard and maybe do a really bad one. So, how do I do it? So they're going to do in favor, and again now, she's collecting, I don't know, stuff. I'll figure out what that is later, but for a ritual to bring back the blizzards. And this is going to be a longer tale, so I'm not even get into the next session as much as the sort of the storyline that they're going to be following. So the killing, involved in killing some way, with the killing. I know what I want here. So I love this idea. So there's a northern spirit in Northern America. The native people, indigenous peoples of the sort of northern area of North America had this villain called the Wendigo. And I don't know how to spell it, but Wendigo, I think, is the agent. So what I'll say is this blizzard was a servant of Oriel, which is the Wendigo, and she's telling him to cut it out, well, as long as they make these sacrifices. So they are going to go to some location, is doing the blizzard, make a sacrifice to the Wendigo, and to bring it back. Doing the blizzard, they want him to bring blizzard back. So I need a location for that. So what I want them to do is the players to follow up on these people, figure out what they're doing and where it goes from there. So I need another fantastic location for this to happen. I want a place for this to converge at, to culminate, and sort of kick off that final fight. And I know that's not off for a while, but I'd love to have a hot springs. springs where it has to happen, has to happen at the new moon, right? Because that's the height of her power. And it would be great if this hot springs was a location of a good spirit that was basically the enemy of Oriel or the Wendigo, like a rival good spirit, like a fae, powerful fae, and that the whole ritual was you have to do this ritual in the place of power of an enemy of Oriel at the height of Oriel's power. So her enemy's power is highest at the new moon, excuse me, at the full moon, and we'll say Oriel's power is highest at the new moon. So they have to perform this ritual in the location, in some sort of consecrated location of the enemy at the height of Oriel's power and the low point of the enemy's power. Has to happen at the new moon, Fae goddess, or I don't know if it's goddess, but Fae spirit, etc. So I'll come up with like boiling water, and that gives me the opportunity when we do the encounter. There might be environmental hazards about hot springs and water. There might be too hot, scald people. Anyway, that's great. I love that idea. Then when it back, they have to perform ritual at hot springs, at new moon, hot springs, location of or Wendigo's enemies. And I'll decide later if what's at stake here is they fight the Wendigo. Having read ahead, I don't think I will do that because that is too similar to an encounter that will eventually have with Oriel herself. So I don't want to do that. All right. So having done that, this gives me this caravan now is moving town to town, collecting lore. So they're collecting lore, items, and energy and lives, souls. We'll say souls. That's what these murders are. To get critical mass for the ritual. So, all right, that's great. So I love that plot. It sets the stage. What I will do, I think, is I'll set the stage for the fight with Oriel later by this presence of the Wendigo sort of hanging out in the snow and sort of this vague outline of this creature that just stares at them creepily for a while and then leaves. So at the end of the last fight, they won't fight the Wendigo itself. It'll just be the cultists. Well, unless they fail, in which case they will have a big problem on their hand. We'll have to deal with that when we get to it, though. All right, so what I want is them to go to Tourmaline, which is the next location. The scenario there is pretty good. There's some more Zentarum hooks because there's a town master. What happened is the mine, I'm actually going to use this mostly as written. The mine has been invaded by kobolds who've chased the miners out because they were afraid and they ran away, but it's not necessarily a combat encounter. What's actually happened is the kobold leader has been possessed by a ghost and he's trying to get them out of the mine to possess somebody more powerful. There's not really a lot of reason behind it. So what I'm going to do is I want to set the stage for two things here. We're going to wrap the stream up here in a few minutes, so I'm not going to do a whole lot more, but I will write this up during the week. What I want to happen is I want to connect the town storyline, and the reason why they have a town guard, that the town is bitterly political. The new speaker of the town has some opposition in the town, and there's some of the Zentarum want to sort of oust them to get their own lackey in there. So because of this, the town guard won't go into the mines because of this politics. And that's as much as the module done. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll create a Zentarum contact in town. Maybe it'll be the same one from the encounter earlier if that person survives. If not, I'll probably make it a different one entirely to sort of set the stage for them being, connected in a network. And the town guard won't go in there because of that. So that just sets the players up to go in to oust these kobolds. Again, I want to give a little bit more reason to this spirit, why it's attacked. So what I'm going to do is say that Torga has come to town and raised this ghost. Torga, also, let me make a few things. Raised The ghost name is Janeth, I think. Janeth. Raise Jath's spirit to get information about the Wendigo. Janeth was a mage that was researching stuff for a time. I'm going to make Jath, having researched the spirit that was in the player store's cave, to give a connection there, so to relate some information. So that will drop information about the broader, more epic tale for tier 1, and sort of continue on down the line with all of that. So I'll make Janth's spirit. I have to give them some info about the ritual. Why don't I just say they were researching a ritual to summon the Wendigo and questioned about it by Torga. So I won't say why or what they're looking to do, but that'll let them know, give them a name. Players from there can say, well, what is this Wendigo? What does it do? And that will probably really get a lot of information across. So the things they need to find, what are they trying to do with the ritual? That'll start them down this road. If it's not apparent on the session after this, I'll seed some more information. Then they need to know where to go. So I'll have them go on one of the other adventures, and I'll work in some way that they'll learn about sort of the enemies of the Wendigo. And then I will, maybe on the 4th adventure, about the time that so I need to time it so that about the time they get information about the location, they're ready to set it off on it, and they should be about 4th level by about then. And this will get them to 5th. All right. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. All right. I am going to actually I'm going to keep it going for about 10 more minutes. So let's think through that. It's not quite at the hour yet. I started the stream about an hour ago, but I did 10 minutes of intro. So let's continue on with this. So Janeth's spirit. So I did a lot of thinking there. The Janeth's spirit to get information. So AB. So the arcane brother. Oh, no, sorry. Torga raised Janth's spirit to get information about the Wendigo. So that will get them to Tamerlane, or however you pronounce it. The spirit, Janth, was studying. So I want to connect. So player backstory is that player store took the secret that they have a spirit that has been sort of vexing them and tried to chase them out of the cave that they lived in as a hermit, and it didn't. So the story, so many stories. So the story I'm trying to set up there is the player has chosen that they want to avoid rage. They're worried that their tribe has thought they were a werewolf because they blacked out in their rage and killing wolves one time, and they were outcast because the tribe thought they were a werewolf, and that's not true. I asked the player, well, do you want to be a werewolf? And they said no. So this creates an interesting opportunity. So what I want to do is that in my mind, so this is the other story. So it's one of these. Odrang is what I named the spirit, and is always trying to get him to rage. So what I've said is Odrang's spirit is an ancestor spirit of the wolf tribe, and that they are one of the remaining lupine warriors. I don't have a better name for that, so if you have a better name, go ahead and suggest it down on the tavern wall comments, please do. But I'm looking for, what I want to make them is one of the, I love this idea of a good set of werewolves that are not this sort of, they're different from lycanthropes, but very similar in terms of their abilities and how they change. And that these werewolves are actually an early form of Horizon Walker, where they are charged with guarding the sort of feral, any creature that comes across the plains, usually the Shadowfell or the Fae, into this world that shouldn't be here. Their whole ethos was to sort of hunt them down and get them either back or kill them, so they didn't infect the prime material plane. So I love that sort of noble, savage background, and that this was one of the original sort of Horizon Walkers, and he wants to recruit Store to become this. So the arc, and it's always hard because I'm rolling the dice with the player if they'll like the storyline or not. The arc of that player's story, I'd imagine, could be they come to terms with their rage and their fear of lycanthropes or wolves, and give in, and or at least decide whether they want to be one of these sort of warriors that protect the veil between worlds, which could be very noble. So I don't know where that's going to go, but that's a story. So Janth, the story I want to set up is Janth was researching the I'll call them the Horizon Stalkers, right? Because Horizon Stalkers was researching the Horizon Stalkers from the early days, and dropped that their spirits still hang in the tombs in Kevin's cairn. So maybe the player will conclude that's what that's what this spirit he knows is. Their spirit knows their spirits. I imagine it's kind of like a Skyrim kind of tomb here. No, their spirits hang around their tombs in Kevin's. I can't spell anything. Kevin's cairn. Imply story for store. So he can set down a little bit of information and actually just lay out who they were for him. I mean, what did Janth know? What did Janth knows they were an early part of the Fey War, I'll say. I don't know what else to call it. Fey Wars, when the Shadowfell and Feywild overlapped too much with the Prime-Material world. So I don't want to say they were outright say, oh, they're good guys or bad guys. I want to give them the, I do try to play it much more gray in terms of my campaign itself. So I'll set that as sort of just, I'll give him that much information, and then he can figure out where he wants to go from there. Because they don't all have to be rangers. They certainly could have been barbarians, and it was a goal, not a class or a subclass. Okay. All right, so that seems pretty good for me. So what I've got is this cold-hearted killer, the pursuit of the murdering, the cultists that are out murdering people, has started with Carlgo. So that gets them to go, I need a secret. Why do they go to Tamerlane? Oh, well, I'll just say Carlgo knows. Knows that this is old knowledge, but last known destination of Torga was, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Tamerlane. It's probably modules. I never remember the name. If I come up with a name myself, I barely remember it, and then I get I get this, and I can't do much at all. Okay, so all right, so that was pretty good. So I think for me, I think that's a good module. So a good session. I mean, I have way more than I'm going to do in this session. So the players are going to go through a small encounter where they'll get tipped off that a Zentarum is looking at someone. They'll get there and they'll realize it's one of the goblins and one of the dwarves from the last session who were involved in this iron shipment. They'll realize it was a heist and a setup. So they'll realize that the Zentarum were involved. They might have a small fight with some assassins. They may not. Maybe they'll just let them go. They'll go back to Carlgo, who's still doing, I'll emphasize, not doing well health-wise. He's going to say that the last, one of his contacts said the last place Torga was known to go was down at this Tamerlane place, and to head up there. They'll do a small bit of travel up to Tamerlane. They'll talk to the town, get to know those people, will sort of get the lay of the land, and that something's happening in the mine. They'll get hired to go do that. They'll go into the mine. They'll resolve that situation one way or another. There's actually some stakes around if Janth gets out. They might just trying to convince them to let him out so he can go possess somebody more powerful. So yeah. So that would be great. And that will tease the Arcane Brotherhood later as well. But I don't want to do too much of that because I've got too many plots already. Torga, we'll get the information about Torga having raised Janth. I'll figure out who that comes from. Probably somebody in town, a wise woman on the edge of town that one of the players from the area knows. So they'll have to clear the mine, resolve that situation, come back out, get the information, resolve the town itself, and then figure out where they're going to go next. And that's sort of it. I have to figure out a clue for the third session. So I might want to do that before this session. So I've laid out that I want them to find out that it was involving the Wendigo. what items they need, and then where the location is. So I'll tease them to go to a different town to find out some more information. But yeah, I think that's a good solid. That's a good solid session. Probably more than I'll run. It might run several sessions actually. So thank you. Anyway, so thank you for viewing this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. You are a hero and you have tremendous endurance. So I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to do these every Saturday at noon Eastern time. I hope you will join me. I would really love to answer questions and talk about D&D. And if we end up talking about D&D the entire time, then so be it. I hope that it's useful. I do intend, this is a new... I've streamed some things before, not live stream, but I have done some videos and podcasts before. I do intend to make a regular channel. This live stream will happen regularly. I'll post on YouTube some additional sort of advice and techniques that I use to run games that I hope you find useful as well. Please go ahead and give me a follow on any of the social media platforms. I'm optional rule on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Instagram, although I don't post a whole lot there. But please go ahead and give me a follow. I would love to talk to you. Follow me up on Twitter. If you love this show, go ahead and leave a like. Please leave a like. It's a new show, so I'm really just, I don't think I have any, I literally just debuted today, so be one of my first subscribers and I will raise a World's Okayest GM mug to you when that happens. And I hope to build up a little conversation both online and here in the stream. So I hope you'll join me in the future. So anything, just question, post it down on the tavern wall. You can leave a comment. Hit me up on Twitter. I would love to answer any questions you have, especially if you find this later. I want to thank you again for joining me. This has really been a lot of fun. My nerves calmed down after I started, so hopefully I will improve in terms of my content and my ability to do live stream a little bit later. I will get used to it, but I had to get one show out of the way. The most intimidating thing about this is you have to start out bad before you can get good. So that's where I was. So I hope it wasn't too bad. I hope you enjoyed it. I really do hope to do this again in the future, and we will see you next week. Until then, remember, fun is not optional. Thank you very much.